Alright, so today's session is going to be a little more aggressive. Enjoying and growing in your own shit. Okay, so the gifts I found as a Plutonian. One of the things I really had to discover as I got older, and I got older, is making time for silence, or rather, that sort of introspection. Now, of course, we all have different personalities. We all have these different experiences. Okay, great. But I tell you right now, making time for silence helps even just a little bit, because when you're silent, not like you don't have sounds, but like silence from within, it's introspection, right? It's everything going inwards, everything processing, everything is just there. It's the emotions. You're really processing it for yourself instead of being reactive to it. So one thing I found was practicing passive behavior. So listening, observing. I know it comes down to, for some, like being a child, like I mentioned this in the other videos, being childlike, all those things, but practicing passive behavior is just like anything that you practice. You have to, when you practice it, you practice it. And being passive for some people may not feel good because they're resisting it, right? So passive means like just you're being okay just by not reacting, by not giving into that, you know. And it's a difference between when the subconscious behaves, or the way it works, at least from my experience. Okay, I'm saying this emphatically, that from my experience, that when it's passive behavior, when you're letting the subconscious do the work, you can either become the reactive type or the non-reactive type. Your subconscious will just do the work. Your subconscious will just get used to it. So if you're used to reacting, basically the point is, if you're used to reacting, it becomes like a habit and just becomes so natural. But there is a difference between being unconscious about it. In other words, you're really just not conscious about how you're reacting, why you're reacting, and then that's when it becomes sort of a detrimental habit. But if it's more positive, I wouldn't say positive, but wholesome behavior, when the subconscious becomes used to not being so reactive, or becoming less and less reactive and more introspective, more processing inwards, then it becomes, well, to put it simply, better. Okay. Number 2, using time alone. So when you're by yourself, so if you're an introvert or whatever, if you have time alone, doesn't matter. When you have time alone, to feel the whole array of emotions so that you can process and deal without destroying everything. For people like myself who are very Plutonian, the anger is sort of this, it can be consuming. It's just like this overwhelming sort of feeling. You just want to resist. You want to destroy the freaking universe and all the universes, right? You just want to get it done and over with so that you are at peace. But it doesn't work that way, because if you are actually there destroying the world, what purpose does it serve you? Really process that. Is it going to heal you? Healing comes from the acceptance that the pain is there for a reason. When we don't work on that shit, when we don't work with our own shit, what happens is we just throw it away and we leave everybody else to deal with it. Does it remove the fact that the shit, like, it's okay? Let me give this another analogy. Pretend you are resisting releasing shit. Okay, you're not taking a dump. What happens? It becomes toxic. It's in your body. Dealing with it means that you're also letting it go and accepting the fact that that process of taking a dump, pooping, okay, to put it bluntly, it has to go out. But it doesn't mean that you're getting rid of it. You are accepting the fact that that's part of the natural process. It's there. It's there. Robots don't take a dump. or at least I don't think so. So they don't need to dump, but we're not robots, are we? Or at least in today's world, we're not robots. So when you take a dump, we take a dump. That's what it is. When you take a breath, we take a breath. That's what's natural. When we resist those things, even actual, let's go back to the whole emotions thing, even resisting that by saying, I don't want it, what the body naturally does, it projects it back into it, back outside. It's projection. It's just what we've had for, I don't know, thousands of years as the ego started developing. We project onto others. But being aware of that means that the process is there naturally. And what's really natural? Is it the thought? Is it thinking about it? Thought itself is natural. But when we're using the thoughts, or when we allow the thoughts to become sort of an unconscious process, not being aware that the thought is there, the thought just kind of like sucks in the water, the emotion. It's just like a hurricane. When we're not aware of, I guess you can see, the knowledge or the science behind it, that when, it's, for example, I could say the analogy of living not close to a tornado zone, not close to somewhere where it's dangerous. It's that conscious process of making that choice to say, this is a natural phenomenon. Why do I live close to a danger zone? Why? Because of other things? Because I want to make money? Because this is where business is? This is where all these excuses that the false self, the ego, makes. That in itself can create more problems. So the point is, going back to the whole thing, I know I digress there, is that array of emotions that you go through. And it's okay to go through that. But when I say array of emotions, I mean, yes, you start feeling it. You want to hurt someone. You want to destroy. You want all those things. But the more you go through those things, the more you start to realize that it's like, wait a second. The thought is attached to the emotion. The thought is attached to the past and the future. The thought is attached to itself. The thought is attached. It's identifying. Your body starts to take over because it's saying enough is enough. The body's saying you need to really let this go. You need to really feel that. Allow yourself to be vulnerable. This is what being passive means. This is what passive behavior also means. This is the process. So when you're accepting the emotion for itself, as itself, on its own, it becomes a physical thing. The best way to really know how to do this is to try it, to do it. Okay? So going back to the body, number 3 is really feeling it. You have that physical awareness. So 2 and 3 are basically linked. Okay? Number 4, when you start to become more aware of the physical feeling of those emotions and your desires or whatever, that whole, I wrote down here, pushing to be correct or to be right or being knowledgeable. I am the one who's in charge here. This whole post applies to this video or whatever, does mainly apply to teachers, people who are in charge, people in authoritative positions. It's not about you. It's not about me. It's about the service we're providing. Right? To put this bluntly, get out of your own way. Okay? Get out of that. It's not helpful. I know that for myself. I'm still learning it myself. So sometimes there's a part of me that goes like, I'm down on myself for being so like egotistical or egoic, as Eckhart puts it. But that's why it has to be a practice. Awareness, going back to the body, is an awareness thing. Number 5. Remember that time alone that I mentioned before? It's silence. What do they say about silence? Silence is golden, right? In this case, though, it's also not giving your power to your ego. And what I mean by power in this case, I'm going to explain this a little bit later, is that it's that sort of feeling vulnerable without purpose. So don't give your power to your ego when you're not ready. When I say to your ego, I mean to that idea that I am important. When you're giving that power, it's this, for some people this doesn't make sense, because it's like when you're giving your power, it means you're just giving into the reactiveness, you're giving into the unconscious behavior, you're giving into that whiny self, you're giving into that the immature child. Okay, it could be child, it could be adult, doesn't matter. That immaturity, that I'm just going to go with it. So the subconscious has no choice but to just go with that, because that's what you're trained to do. That's what you've been allowing yourself also to do. As you get older, you start to develop more, what do you call it, synapses or whatever they're called. You start to develop these things. You start to understand these things. So especially as an adult, you become more aware of that. You start to realize, wait a second, am I just going to be reactive? Am I just going to let, and it has a lot more to do with just being immature. Because a lot of times we think of immaturity as like being childish. Not really. Immaturity is a lack of awareness, a lack of acceptance and acknowledgement that you have weaknesses, that you have these ups and downs. Because that's being honest. It comes from a place of honesty.